Hello, gamers. I messed up a little bit. I recorded a bunch of gameplay, but I had my mic on the wrong setting, so my voice is very quiet relative to this game. And that's just no good, because if you can't hear what I'm saying, that's just a huge tragedy. Which means I've skipped ahead a little bit, and I'm going to continue on from here. Not too much has changed, it's not like something super exciting happened, but luckily I caught this just before actually trying to upload the video. And just before we start the actual mission, the actual story mission, because they send you on a lot of unimportant missions first before they give you the actual story mission. Although I have grabbed the cache from the black site, or not the black site, but the alpha site, the cache of Omega weapons, which I was hoping to show off, but I guess I can just show where it's supposed to be when I actually get to Alpha Site for the Ziggurat. But it's something you can do relatively early on. The enemies there are going to be one Alpha Core Fulgent, and then either two Gamma Core, no, not Gamma Core, two Alpha Core Glimmers, or a second Alpha Core Fulgent. There's the two combinations you usually end up with. So as long as you've got enough ships to deal with that, which shouldn't take too long, then you can grab those Omega weapons. And in my case, I got a Cryoblaster, which is probably the best thing you can grab this early, or in general, from their cache, because it only gives you up to medium-sized weapons. Now, here we have a very cool friend giving us missions, Alvis. I decided that he could join the Cool Sunglasses Club, because Alvis is just the best guy. He's the best guy. He's the only guy who doesn't get annoying. Well, that's not entirely true. Some characters don't get... They could be annoying. I could see how Gargoyle could be annoying to some people. I find him amusing. But Alvis, everybody likes Alvis. Alvis, he's just... Look at him with his glasses. He's such a handsome young man. His mom is so proud of him. But I've got to say, Alvis, his portrait looks like he's like this 35-year-old depressed academic. But his dialogue sounds a lot more like a young graduate who's very fresh-faced and is really optimistic and naive. That's what his dialogue sounds like, which is kind of contrasted by he looks a lot older and kind of depressed. So, I'm thinking we can't change the writing because that's the most important part. That's the part that makes Alvis such a likable character. So maybe we should make the portrait just look less like a 35-year-old jaded academic. At least that's my thought on the whole thing. You want me to rescue a researcher from a secret Tritachyon base? Yes. Yes, exactly. See, look at him. He's so like... Because you put rescue in air quotes. You're like, you want me to rescue a researcher, like rescue. And he's like, yeah, rescue. He's not picking up on the subtext there. So that gives me... that's exactly what I'm talking about with him being a bit young and naive. At least the way that he comes across. Yeah, of course, this is the story mission. It's down here. Oh, transverse jump. I know how to do that. I'll have my nav officer provide you the data. Isn't that so cool? You guys theorized it was maybe, possibly, something you could do. But I've already done that. And the other one. 100,000 credits. That's actually quite a lot. Even for a mission that far out. Normally they don't pay that much. Well, it doesn't look like there's a time limit, so I'll grab it anyways. Alright, that's that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is going to be very exciting. We've got money, so I'm going to buy... I'm going to be looking for an extra cruiser, because in the meantime, I've expanded the fleet a little bit. I've got a mule, I've got a Tempest, and I've got proper weapons, like an auto-pulse laser, which I found at the church. Yes, of course, the church. Very much known for their love of high-tech, high-energy weapons. For some reason, that's where they were selling it, so I grabbed it. And I think this works. I think the setup works pretty well. We've got a nice level 7 officer elite energy weapon mastery, ordnance expertise. It's a pretty flux heavy setup, but it's working. I do have expanded magazines. I should definitely consider S-modding that, because there's been a few changes to the way bonus XP works that have made me much more comfortable putting S-mods on ships that I'm not keeping, whereas before that was a much bigger no-no, because right now the way that it works is that bonus XP doubles your rate of XP gain, but then you get to max level and it doubles it again. So instead of times 2, it's times 4. And that's a very clever change. And you know it's clever because I didn't think of it. But that was a very clever change that I was pretty impressed with, because people were complaining a lot about that green XP bar just never going away once you hit max level. So the bonus XP that you spend, it's supposed to refund you the story point once you use up all the bonus XP, but you were never getting to that point. Now you actually can. On top of that, the way that the S-mods work with bonus XP is that you get part of it up front when you build the S-mod in, and you get part of it by scuttling the ship. So for a frigate, you get 75% up front, and then for each story mod, you get 25% when you scuttle it, which the hotkey is U. So you would scuttle it, you get your resources, and you'd also get bonus XP. So the bonus XP from building it in plus scuttling equals 100%. Smaller ships give you more of that bonus XP up front, whereas larger ships, it's more in the scuttling. So building in story points to a cruiser, you're investing you're only getting 25% back, meaning that 75% of that story point is in the ship. But when you scuttle it later on, because I don't think I'm going to be keeping the apogee for my endgame fleet, I'll scuttle it and I'll get the rest of it back. And with the change to the way story points work, or at least bonus XP works, that's actually doable. So that's a very nice change. Oh yeah, I've also got antimatter SRMs here. Decided to S-mod a few things after thinking about it, because my old strategy would have been, and I've been asked, how do you get the story points you need for a late game fleet? Well, the answer I would have given before is save every single story point that you can and only buy the things. Like, you need to know what your end game fleet is going to be and then only invest story points in that. That works, but it's also not really the way the game is meant to be played, number one. And number two, it's just not as fun. Now, you still should save story points. I'm running a little low. You would probably want to sit up at like a 10. And then as you get closer to max level, maybe a 15. Right? If you don't have especially if you don't have the ships that you want yet, if you know what your endgame fleet is going to be, then you should be saving up points so that once you get that ship, you can immediately turn it into the ship that you want with the story points and the officers and so on. Right, so I've hired you. I gave this officer the elite bonus for their point defense so that they can use the machine guns more effectively. This is a pretty solid little build. Now what I'm going to do is I started up a colony. Now I'll get into the logic of why I started it, where I started it, because I started a colony a lot earlier than I normally do. Normally I like to save up money, have a decent fleet, so that I can just dump a bunch of money investing in the colony and steamroll any problems that I run into. That's not what I did this time. I did something different, which is I started it up early before I was able to deal with any of the problems. Because really, I want to show that these problems are not that difficult. Now that I've got this Eagle here with 3 cruisers, some destroyer support, so throw in a Tempest in there, you've got a couple S-mods, a couple officers. This should be able to take on the pirate base that is currently harassing my colony. Maybe I probably could have done it without the Eagle, but it would have been a bit more difficult. So I decided to pick it up just to make it extra easy. Now, that being said, I do have to actually equip the Eagle. It looks like Heavy Needlers might be the best available choice here. Not a huge fan of Disintegrators, but they do have that 700 range going for them. What if I did? That range mismatch is a bit weird, but I'm curious if I could actually make it work. Here's your dedicated targeting core. Building these in early on is a good idea, because not only does it give you that 15 extra ordnance points, it also makes up for the difference between dedicated core and a targeting unit, right? The idea is, well, if you build this early on, like you're a new player, and you're not knowing that the integrated targeting unit is coming later, then you're going to feel bad, because you're like, wow, this ship is just stuck with the worst version forever. Oops. So the fact that you can build this in, and it ends up working the exact same as the proper targeting unit, means that it's a pretty good choice. Like, why would I build in hardened shields when I can build this in? It's just better. And you can see I'm doing this again, where I'm not really planning to keep the Eagle forever. But I think with the way that bonus XP has been adjusted, this is a lot more, it's a lot less punishing. Okay, let's see. Mini Pulsar. Actually, with the chain gun, the Mini Pulsar's got about the same range. Phase Lances are going to be very hard on the Flux Grid, though. Also managed to grab Solar Shielding, which I just put on everything. Even with a medium-sized fleet, like when you've got that early game fleet, you can run through storms, and it's like nothing. Once you get up to a medium-sized fleet, not even a large one, just a medium, then Solar Shielding provides a lot of value. This is going to be a weird build, but then again, we are attacking a station, so it's not like the enemy's going to be able to backpedal out of range. My biggest concern right now is, yeah, I don't really want to do a Phase Lance. It's going to be too much. And then again, most of that flux cost is because of the chain gun. Do I have any decent point? Well, I could do PD lasers. And then leave those empty. Yeah, this is not exactly... I'm curious, though. I want to see how this does against a slow, not too strong target. Because range mismatched weapons can work, but you do have to spend some time investigating how the AI performs. It's not even enough to know how it performs at a 1v1, right? Because it's very easy and very tempting to just test 1v1s over and over, but a lot of the time, you actually need to see how it performs both with multiple enemies and multiple allies. Yeah, I'm not liking that. Okay, let's do something a little less wacky. Yeah, wacky. I kind of hate the fact that that actually makes sense because of how efficient the LDAC is right now, and this is a hard point. So the recoil's not as big of a deal. I kind of hate it, but it does fit. Well, first let's repair. Alright, let's see how you do now. Actually, I can move you over here. Yeah, let's do it like that. Is it going to beat a Dominator? Definitely not. Not at this stage, anyways. Now, disintegrators are not exactly the best Omega weapon you can get, but it should be enough. You can strip off armor, and then the kinetics should do enough damage against hull once the armor is stripped off. And this is why burst PDs tend to be a lot better than regular PD lasers. I'm honestly not sure what the point of regular PD lasers are beyond, like, So the thing with PD lasers is I just don't see what they're good for. At least long-range PD lasers have their range going for them. It's right in the name. And they're also more flux efficient than regular PD lasers, at the expense of doing less damage per second. But you can make that work with point defense AI and the point defense skill. When it comes to the PD lasers, I just can't see why in the long term you would use them over a burst PD or a long-range PD. There just isn't really a use case for them. They're kind of like an early game weapon that you only use to protect yourself from salamanders when you have nothing better to work with. So I think I'm going to remove these ones on the front. They're not providing any value. But yeah, you can see this is working a lot better than the first iteration. When you take off that chain gun, that was not really doing much. Yeah, I think ideally what I would want are IR auto lances, so I'll probably drop by the Persian League to grab them if I can. Because this will strip off armor, and then once the armor is stripped off, the IR auto lances are quite good against hull. Now originally, I thought IR auto lances were meant to be a specialized anti-fighter weapon. That was the impression that I had. But that's not really what they are. It's like, yes, they can be effective against fighters, the same way that a phase lance can, but a phase lance isn't a specialized anti-fighter weapon, and similarly, the IR auto lance is not a specialized anti-fighter weapon, although that's the impression that I got from reading the original post where they were talked about. But this is a perfect example of where you would want them. You've got kinetics to deal with shields, you've got it's kind of like a breach pod in the form of a hybrid weapon, where it does damage specifically to armor, but not to hull. So that sets you up perfectly for auto lances. For now, though, this should be good enough. At least until I get back home, because I've probably got better weapons that I can fit into the rest of these slots. Yeah, and you do want to check for officers a lot. Ordnance expertise, hello. Yeah, that sounds good. You do absolutely want to be checking for officers a lot, because they just make all the difference in the world when it comes to your fleet power. All things considered, I don't think you... Actually, hold on. Let's... Yeah, that's exactly what I can do. If you have ordnance expertise, then I can get more flux-hungry weapons, which will make you more powerful. The only thing that's not working here is the lack of a targeting unit, but I haven't unlocked that yet. Now, I don't plan on keeping the Manticore for the late game. When I started the save file, that was the idea, but I've since tested, and I've talked about this in the other video about the... Which one was it? I don't think it was the Legion one. I think it was the high-tech and low-tech mixed together. That fleet. I talked about how the Manticores don't really work in the late game as well as they used to. Not that they were ever great, but now they suffer a lot. So you're not going to be sticking around. Speaking of my late game strategy, what I've decided on is I'm going to pilot a Radiant. I'm going to make that my flagship. That's the idea. Which means going 8 points into technology and grabbing both capstones. But of course, you can't stop there. You can't just take both capstones. You're going to need some combat skills, and especially systems expertise, because the difference between Phase Skimmer with and without systems expertise is massive. Without it, the Radiant feels like a battleship. With systems expertise, it feels like a battle cruiser in terms of mobility, but it still has the firepower and defenses of a battleship. It feels like cheating, honestly, which is probably why it was nerfed in certain ways, with the neural integrator costing more on automated ships, but that is specifically targeting the Radiant, but then it also applies to other automated ships, so it doesn't feel, where on those ships it doesn't feel as fair. So there might be some balance adjustments that need to be done there. we can see that I've colonized here, which I should probably talk about the logic here. Now, normally I would wait for until I've not only got colony items so that I know which places to colonize to take advantage of those items, and then I would think about, well, I'd think about a lot of things. Like, is there a gate in this system? And I would look for a quality world. But instead, I went very quickly and I just colonized Penelope Star. Because more important than the actual output of your world is the accessibility. This is something that I noticed eventually, which is you might story point, say, you're mining to increase the output, versus story point your spaceport to increase accessibility. And pretty much every single time, it doesn't matter what you're producing. It could be light industry pumping out drugs. It could be heavy industry. It can be whatever it is. The increase in output you get from story pointing it or putting an alpha core there is pretty much always going to make you less money than an increase in accessibility. It's so much more important. And on top of that, accessibility boosts population growth. Like, this is a gas giant. I'm not paying any hazard pay because I'm pretty early in the game and I'd rather be making money than losing money on this. So I'm not paying that. And I'm still making a decent chunk of money. Now, as far as gas giants go, I did get pretty lucky here. This is about as good as it gets. They always have high gravity. Usually they have more hazards on top of that, but in this case, just high gravity, which is pretty penalizing. It's one of the worst colony conditions you can have. I guess that's what they're called. Traits, colony conditions. It's one of the worst ones you can have. 50% hazard rating is high, and 10% accessibility. Well, I've just talked about why accessibility is so important. But you're always getting it on a gas giant. Usually it comes with more, but in this case, there were no more. And it came with the highest number of volatiles possible, +2. So I figure, why not? There's no gate in the system, but we're so close to the core worlds, I'm not really bothered by that. Now, when it comes to starting a colony, there's one thing that's extremely important that you have to take very seriously. And that's the name of your faction. Because if you roll up to, say, Kanta's Den, and you introduce yourself as the leader of the explorers from the planet Dora, you're just going to get laughed out of the room. If you want that respect from the big players in the sector, you got to take your name seriously. So naturally, after thinking about it for a while, I've decided to name my capital world Skeletopolis, and we are the Calcium Cabal. We've even got a nice little skull on our flag. Look, you got to pay respect to the bones. They're inside of all of us, and I figure that's a good foundation for a very respectable faction. So, with that out of the way, one thing that's somewhat of a problem here is I don't have the money to get a patrol HQ. And because I don't have that, the hostile activity monitor is just ticking up every month. This, just building it on your planet, on at least one planet, will give you -5 per month. And if you can get that, the baseline increase low enough, then it'll actually tick down per month. So, for example, size 3 adds 3 to the uptick per month. -4, we're missing 4 stability. So that means that that's another 4. So it's ticking up by 7 per month. If you could get it to 10 stability, then it would just be the 3 from its size. -5 from the patrol HQ would be -2 per month. Now, part of that, hey look, this is something that needs to be talked about. Hostile activity, as it ticks up, it reduces your accessibility, which hurts your profits a lot, and then also reduces your stability. And by reducing your stability, it increases the growth of hostile activity. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't, which is unfortunate because the devs want to add, let me see if I can pull this up here. The devs want to add like a bunch of different events at these points, right here and here. They want it to be like a deck of cards where you pull out a random card and you get an event to deal with. So you've got 2 approaches. You either stop the growth of hostile activity, or You let it tick up, and then when the event rolls by, you just deal with whatever comes up. It's like a surprise fun event. It's like a raid. It's like a Warcraft raid, except you're the boss. That's a weird analogy. And I've never played Warcraft, so, well, World of Warcraft, so I wouldn't know. But the point that I'm making is the passive debuffs from having your hostile activity, right, that reduction to stability and accessibility. Because of that, nobody wants to let it tick up. Everyone's taking option A. Between the two strategies of just dealing with the events or preventing the meter from ticking up, everybody chooses to prevent the meter from ticking up because these passive debuffs, they get ridiculous. This one's -4 stability and 40% accessibility. And the devs have said, well, you know, your colonies are still profitable at that point, and it's like, that's true, but it also feels really bad. So nobody wants to do it. Now, with that said, the devs are thinking about, they're considering just removing those passive debuffs in order to make people more comfortable letting the meter tick up, in which case they can then go ahead with their deck of cards events, and people will actually be able to engage with them instead of it just being a mechanic nobody uses because nobody lets the meter tick up. So, right now, I mean, some of the changes that we've made because of community feedback has made things a lot better. Like before, destroying a pirate base, it just removed this passive increase per month and had no immediate effect on hostile activity. And everybody hated it. So, because of community feedback, they've changed it so when you blow up the pirate base, you get a big chunk taken off, like 60 points or something. I don't think it's exactly 60. I think it depends. I'm not exactly sure how it's decided, but it's a pretty solid chunk. And that feels a lot better. So right now I'm sitting at low impact, but I can get it back to nothing if I destroy this pirate base. So that's going to be what I'm doing now. Which is very easy to find because of this. Buy him something more palatable. This is actually a lot of events on my colony, even though normally there's very few. I wish this cost you like 10 credits or something, right? You're buying him a meal. At least charge me like 10 credits or something. Or hell, charge me 1 credit. I don't care. I want to see like I actually spent a little bit of money on that. I don't think I care about any of those. Yeah, no officers showing up here just yet. Right, so I did build my comm relay, so I can drop those off. Oh, and these. That's 120,000 credits if I give that to TriTac. Which would get me close to being able to afford a patrol HQ. But not quite. Yeah, Gamma Cores, you don't really need them for the late game. Sometimes they can be useful just to make sure, oh, this industry is using 1 more than I produce. I'll drop a Gamma Core in there so that I can meet that demand in faction. But normally, you don't really need them. So you just pawn them off to TriTac and make a bunch of money. What the hell was that? My instincts are telling me to quick save. Where did that fleet come from? Is this a bounty? I didn't see an exclamation mark. Doesn't look like it. What the hell? Why is there such a big fleet? Hostile activity is low. That was way larger than I was expecting. Although it is a pirate fleet, so I could probably take it. But I'm going to go blow up their base instead. That seems more productive. Why stop the ants when you can block the nest? Or I guess in this case, blow it up. Okay. I think I'm going to drop here. Sensor array, perfect. Ooh, that's nice. Orbital habitats. Really? Automated defenses? Okay, sure. This is one thing that does get a little annoying, is these automated defenses. Just because, like, this is not like a difficult fight or anything. This is not a challenge. I'm just showing up and deploying some ships, and then I just watch. So, this is the kind of thing that would, if I was bothering to edit videos, I would probably cut out, just because it's not super interesting. Oh, I should probably talk about this Tempest build a little bit, because I have to say, it's a lot more usable now that they've reduced the flux cost on everything. Like the pulse laser and the ion beam put together, like this used to cost 60 more flux a second. The ion beam used to cost 50 more flux a second, so that's 110 extra flux a second. The Tempest already can't afford these weapons, as is right now. Can you imagine just throwing on an extra 110 per second for just an ion beam plus pulse laser? It was way overpriced. It was a very, very good change to reduce those flux costs, I would say. Actually, it would have been more interesting probably to watch the Lasher with its machine guns and elite PD. Alright, boys, finish him off. Yeah, the Tempest was my favorite ship when I first started playing, but that was before it got Termination Sequence. Now, I think Termination Sequence is cool, but it does feel a bit... It doesn't feel quite right. Maybe if the replacement time for Terminator drones was cut down a bit, 20 seconds is a bit much, or maybe if it was more reliable at hitting its target, like an improvement to maneuverability and speed. It feels like something's missing there. But I do like the idea. Trading off your defensive drones to do a big chunk of damage. It does mean it doesn't need, you don't need to put a breach missile on your Tempest, generally speaking, because it's already got an armor cracking ability built in, which is handy. Oh hey, I also got high-tech blueprints. That's cool. Let's see. Ship recovery. Nah. I've already got 2 trams. This is worth nothing. Food is worth nothing. I mean, it's worth 1/3 less than metal, and metal's already worth nothing. Okay, so... Sensor array. Well, the first thing I'm going to do... Uncover nearby slipstreams, get some more topographic data, because that's a really useful mechanic. And introduce false readings, because I would like to fight the pirate base without any fleets supporting it. And if you introduce the false readings here, then any fleets that are around the pirate base will generally scatter to chase after those readings. Actually, there's a gate in this system too, on top of... Wow, that's a domain error. This isn't makeshift, this is domain tech. That's a proper comm relay and nav buoy. Along with, they've already built the sensor array for us, and a gate. This is a pretty damn good system. I don't know how the pirates... It's even an arid world. It really depends on... Okay, focus. I've got to find the pirate base. Yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible. Along with the proper comm relay and the gate. This would actually be a good place to colonize. Maybe in the future. Oh hey, a Medusa. Again, not something I'm planning on keeping, but Medusas are actually not that bad. Then again, I don't think I will, yeah. It's not something I'm planning on keeping. So I'll come back and I'll harvest you guys. But first I want to find these pirates. They should be in the rings somewhere. Well, there's guys. Those guys are probably chasing that false data. Is this another... Wow, it's a fair amount of debris fields. Harvested organs. Looks like some people didn't make it. Like the beginning of the Planet of the Apes. I can't believe I still remember that. It has been... I was like a child when I watched that. Okay, so there's just combat mechs floating in space. Very cool. Alright, it looks like... Mum... Wait, for a second I thought it was like... Oh, is it Mum's orbit? Is that Mum's orbit there? Alright then. No, it's Merm. Damn, it ruins it. Alright, remember people. Oh, you can always sell to the pirates right before you kill them. They'll buy it. That feels like it's undervalued. Yeah, you generally 400s, yeah. Don't get mad at me for making fun of British people, alright? I would never sincerely make fun of British people. Millions of people suffer from the condition every day. It would just be insensitive to make fun of something like that. Perfect. Yeah, you can just hire them, you can sell shit to them, and then blow them up. It's way better to do it that way. Right? Business is business. And it's not like they're going to be able to use these resources because I'm blowing them up. So it's like I'm just taking their money and I'm not contributing to the pirate ecosystem. So I'm not a bad guy. I'm actually a good guy. That's how that works. Alright. Well, it's time to blow them up. It should actually be fairly easy. Let's bring the I don't think I want to bring you. You're going to get your ass kicked, aren't you? Tempest is a good idea. Centurion should be able to survive with that damper field. Yeah, cruisers, destroyers, the Tempest because it's really fast, the Centurion because it's got a damper field. And that should do it. I'm also thinking about uploading more memes, like Star Sector memes. Just taking common meme formats that we see and just adding Star Sector stuff to them. You know, nothing revolutionary. And probably people have made the same memes before on Lay Reddit, a website that I do not use. And it seems like nobody's going to be using it pretty soon. Oh, I probably should have blocked that Hellbore. Okay. Let's get a little closer and torpedo. Perfect. I think I can get away with venting here. Yeah. No, this is easy. Destroying a pirate base is... even without the Omega weapons, which I know makes things look a little easier here. That Cryoblaster in particular is a very special weapon. I mean, think about it. It costs the same as a Hellbore, and it does 1400 hull DPS to hull, which is... I mean, that's kind of a ridiculous number. It's practically a large weapon, if you really think about it. But even without that, you can see that was pretty easy. We didn't need that. We're not desperate for that DPS. We already had it pretty locked down. And there's a -40 to hostile activity, and there's a level. Right. So I didn't pick Neuralink yet because I don't have any combat skills, so it's not super useful. I didn't pick automated ships yet because I want to use a Radiant, and then I'm going to use... well, if you Neuralink a Radiant, that uses 60 points, so you still have 60 left over. And for that, the only ship that I can think of that would actually work pretty well would be Gamma Core Glimmers. Now, you could do Alpha Core, but then at that point, you're either only grabbing a couple, or you're grabbing a decent amount, and they are eating into your combat readiness, which you probably don't want if you're piloting the Radiant yourself. So instead, I'm going to grab just 6 Gamma Core Glimmers. And then eventually I'm going to grab Wolfpack Tactics to boost them. Because here's the thing. If you're piloting a Radiant, you grab both of these. You need to. Then you're going to grab Systems Expertise, because it... obviously, if you don't grab it, you're doing it wrong. But that means that you have 13 points spoken for already. They're already decided for you. So what do you do with those last 2 points? You only have 2 points of flexibility. Well, what are you going to do? You could, in theory, grab ordnance expertise, but you're not. You're not going to do that, are you? Because here's the thing. Combat readiness on your ships. You don't have hull restoration. You don't have support doctrine. So the only thing boosting their combat readiness is the combat endurance from the officers. Which means that crew training is right there and would immediately boosts all of your ships by 15%. That's 5% damage, 5% that's 5% reduced damage, 5% increased damage, 5% speed, 5% maneuverability, and it affects auto-fire accuracy. It's just, obviously you're going to take that, which then means you have 1 point to work with. Well, chances are you're not going with these, because you usually want both if you're going to be using carriers. You're probably not grabbing tactical drills. So with that last point, what you've really got a choice is, do I want an extra combat skill? I could grab both of these. I could grab a 6th combat skill. Or I could grab one of these two. And that's about it. So you really have 14 points spoken for, and then one that's flexible. But the flexibility is not really, it's not like a lot. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to go Gamma Core Glimmers with Wolfpack Tactics. And since I need 8 points in tech anyways, I'll be having Phase Coil Tuning, which is a perfect opportunity to grab some Pirate Afflictors. Oh wait, and I also have Wolfpack Tactics because of the Gamma Core Glimmers. So now I've got like 8 frigates using Wolfpack Tactics, some of them being Glimmers, some of them being the Afflictors. And here's something about ECM as well, because a lot of people don't think it's a very good skill. And I find it kind of boring, but there is definitely a place for it. Right now, if I deploy my combat ships, that's 10% ECM off of this skill. That's enough that human fleets are going to have the full penalty, because they don't have any ECM, for the most part. So that by itself is pretty strong. But late game, I've done the math on this. I'm going to have a Paragon that I'm starting in, because you have to start in a human ship. Then that's going to link to a Radiant. Right? So that's 2 ships. Then I've got 8 human officers, so now that's 10 ships. And then I've got 6 Glimmers. So that's 16 ships. That's 16% ECM. If I give those Glimmers gunnery implants, they have 24%. Put it together, that's 40%. Now, sometimes remnant fleets can go up to 50, in the 50%, but that's usually because they have so many small ships at the start of the battle. And what you find is, as the battle goes on and you kill off the smaller ships and they have to move towards larger and larger ships, their ECM drops dramatically. So it starts like 50%, and then 40, and then 30, and then towards the end, they're closer to 20. Now, 40% on my end, plus I'm going to have total lockdown on the control points. With those Glimmers and those Pirate Afflictors, those sensor arrays, those sensor jammers are mine. Meaning that I'm actually not going to have 40%, I'm going to have 45 to 50%, depending on how many sensor jammers spawn. So I think in this case, that 16% from ECM is actually going to be really useful for my late game strategy. Well, that's enough of that. I've blown this up. He's running off, scared. Like he should be. Yeah, that's fake. Yeah. That is mega fake. Okay, let's go home. Or do I want to go home? I think I want to go see Tritech first to drop off these Gamma Cores. I am so close to having enough. Actually, once the month ticks over, I should get just enough from the Galatia stipend plus the money from my colony. That should give me just enough to push me over the edge, even though I do have to pay my fleet. Okay. White Dwarf. See, the cool thing about the White Dwarf is that you don't actually spawn in the Corona. You spawn next to it. Look. Wait, what? I was just saying how this doesn't happen. That is the first time that's happened to me. Why did the game have to contradict me there? That's just disrespectful. Okay. Well, first things first. Turn in these AI cores. Oh wait, yeah, I've collected more, so that's even more money. Which means I should be able to... Plasma cannons. Ion pulsers are pretty rare, and they are pretty good. But I really wish they had a bit more range. Give them 600 range. Because I want to see them used on things like the algae eagle, like the Lion's Guard eagle. I want to see it use these on those front hybrid points. But, man, 500 range is just so short. Like, it's not like 600 range is crazy better, but it tips it a little further there, right? That being said, an Ion Pulsar is really good on the Tempest. Or maybe... Wait, hold on. This is actually a perfect opportunity. Do you have any good weapons here? No. Because one build that I used a lot before... Ah, no way, I already built in 2S mods. Damn. I didn't think I would actually have this opportunity, but... One that I used before, and was quite happy with, was Ion Pulsar Mini Pulsar. And now with the S mod bonus for expanded magazines, this could be even better. But alas, it is not to be. Well, even without the S mod bonus, if we look at the sustained flux plus the shield, it's already 345, just under its dissipation here. Not to mention, with the baseline effect of expanded magazines, they are generating a bunch of flux up front, like a lot of flux up front. So we do need that maxed out capacity. This should be pretty good though. Like if I put this up against something, like an Enforcer or no, like a Hammerhead. Let's see. How does this do? Field modulation does help. I don't have Wolfpack Tactics yet, so that does hurt. But Tempests are definitely a ship you have to be careful with. With that 108, yeah. Well, it's more or less winning that, but the AI is going to back off, and because the Tempest is faster, it's going to run away. Even though it could theoretically win. But yeah, it's one of those ships you have to be careful with, because having an amazing top speed means that it's very easy to pick engagements. You can... What I used to do when I first started playing the game is I would just build fleets of pure Tempests. I'd put all of my officers into Tempests, I wouldn't buy any other ships. And that would give me a fleet of 80 deployment points. Not a lot, considering the maximum is 240 you can deploy at once. But even with that, you could take on most challenges in the game. Like, you're not taking on Tesseracts or the Ziggurat or Remnants in the late game. But most human bounties can be taken down by just the 10 Tempests because of that their ability to pick engagements and to just spread out over the map. Enemies will chase down them because they've got nothing else to fight, so they're going to chase down the frigates, find themselves in awful positioning, and then you could use an eliminate order to surround them and put them out of their misery. And it does take a bit of patience, but it does mean, like the upside there is, you're getting a lot of bonus XP. And your fleet, you're getting simultaneously a lot of bonus XP, and the maintenance costs and fuel costs of your fleet are really low, because you're only using 8 fuel per light year and 80 supplies a month for those Tempests, plus whatever logistics ships you bring. So that's definitely one strategy you can use, is, although this also works with a lot of other fast, high-tech frigates, like the Omen, the Scarab, the Hyperion, although then you're getting hurt by high maintenance a little bit, and the Tempest. Not so much, well, the Wolf kind of does, but it's generally not as good, I would say. And the Tritachyon Brawler also, because it's not actually fast without plasma burn, or plasma jets. Yeah, it's plasma jets. That one needs its plasma jets to actually move quickly, but it doesn't really use plasma jets the best, so it ends up not being as good as you would hope. Okay. Yeah, that gives me enough money that I can now buy my patrol HQ before I get my way station, although way station would be useful for that extra accessibility and the resources you can buy. Everybody loves way stations. But I'm going to build this because I want to keep my hostile activity low. Let's see, hostile major events. Yeah, so once this is finished, then this will be at +1 a month. And then if I can increase the stability by building ground defenses or orbital stations, then that'll drop it down to 0 a month, and then to the negative. So this is well on its way to solving itself. Well, I think that's enough for now. So, be careful out there, and take it easy.